slowly walk. Okay, here goes. Are you coming for the disc? Alright, alright. Alright, let's see. Alright. No worries. Okay. I'm keeping up the live and moving there. Thank you, bye.
Как фатиса? Здравия.
Туда.
Да, знаю.
Здесь
Чего, чего?
Unde?
Ha?
Acum ai ajuns?
Acum 2 săptămâni am ajuns.
Nu, aici.
Te pula, sunt de dimineața, ceau.
Nu, ai ajuns la catedrală.
Am fost dincolo.
Da, și se poate ajunge acolo?
Unde e acolo? Da. Nu mai e nimeni, s-a terminat acolo.
Hi guys, how are you doing? Show this later. Давайте.
Ja, det er klokka 10. Ja, ja. Nei da, jeg bare tenker at det hadde vært gøy å se om det er noe å snakke om. Så du får vurdere selv om du har lyst til å komme hit. Du trenger kanskje ikke det. Nå har jeg fått sagt at jeg er her sammen med verdenspressen. ゼレンスキー大統領が犠牲となった兵士たちの顔写真が並ぶ場所に花を手向けに行くとみられます。Ja. Ja, nei, det vet jeg ikke. Jeg vet ikke. Nå har jeg sagt at jeg vet ikke hva som skjer. Jeg bare tror at det er staten. Okay. Ja, men da får jeg gjøre det. Tusen takk. Ha det. キーウ市内中心部です。この後ゼレンスキー大統領が犠牲となった兵士たちの顔写真が並ぶ場所に花を手向けに行くとみられます。ゼレンスキー大統領が
Самоходу так что очень защищаться не может работать.
А у экрана? Сейчас, не чекайте. Щит, для заезда с экрана до машины просто больше.
Masz to jakieś to wejście?
Так. Чудово. Прекрасно. Рульне питання. Що? Ідеально. Я надав, ви діти точно. Так.
Щит, приехал.
Не, ну там понятно.
Или заезд.
Пока по городу.
Видите, экране.
Да, мы потянем мотопоставок и там его выдадим, притянем сюда.
Ні, тут
Потом
правда.
уже не будет
Біля пані.
Вот это модель. Где-то
Добрий день, можете, будь ласка, запам'ятати ЗСУ?
Чекайте. В сторону воєнних.
Добре. Вопрос?
Ні, щоб його зустріли. Чи його буде робити?
Куда именно? А вы куда хотите?
Ну, до машины. Я заправлю.
А, все, это польская делегация. Конечно.
Powiedz mi, to ty to odpowiadasz za to wszystko? No powiedz mi taką rzecz posterunku. Masz.
samtidighed, som kommer til at foregå herovre, måske kan skimte den her væg i baggrunden, den blå dernede, og den er fuld af billeder af faldende soldater. Det var her, at den amerikanske præsident Joe Biden og den ukrainske præsident Zelensky, de lagde en krans til ære for de faldende soldater. Og lige om lidt, ja, der kommer til at ske et eller andet med nogle højtstående personer. Angiveligt, vi har set en hel masse fra en polsk delegation. Om det betyder, at der er højtstående polakker i byen, det kan jeg selvfølgelig ikke sige med sikkerhed, men meget kan godt tyde på, at i hvert fald er nogle personer, der kræver meget beskyttelse, som kommer til at deltage i den her ceremoni, som altså lige så langsomt begynder at gå i gang. Vi kan måske se, at der er masser af pressefolk samlet i hele verden. Det er samlet her i Kiev på grund af den her helt særlige dag, hvor rigtig mange ukrainere, de altså tænker tilbage på det år, der er gået, tænker på de faldne soldater, på de mange civile, der er blevet dræbt, og tænker selvfølgelig også over, hvor lang tid kommer den her krig til at fortsætte, står vi også her den 24. februar 2020. Der er mange, der håber, men det er også det, de har penge på, fordi der er masser af uvished. Ingen ved, hvornår det her kommer til at slutte, og hvis vi skal ærlige, er der heller ikke nogen, der ved, hvordan det her kommer til at ende, og det ved borgerne helst ikke her i Kiev og i resten af Ukraine. Og derfor så er håbet som nøgleord, fører sig til håbet er væk. Ja, så er det ikke fordi, så folk de ser ind i fremtiden, så bekymrer det ekstremt meget. Men igen, Joe Bidens besøg har jeg virkelig kunne mærke betydeligt noget for mange ukrainere. Det er altså et tæt yderligere håb om, at der er altså nogen, der holder hånden under Ukraine, der er nogen, der har dem i ryggen, der er nogen, der er med dem, og som Joe Biden sagde, vi er med hele vejen, så langt at det bliver.
darüber aus Sicherheitsgründen. Wir sehen hier die Sicherheitskräfte, die inzwischen gekommen sind, um den gesamten Platz hier abzusperren. Wir gehen deshalb davon aus, dass der Präsident der hier dann auch in Kürze hinkommen wird. Er war auch das eher Informationen, die wir hier inoffiziell bekommen haben, heute Morgen schon in der Sophienkirche, die ist hier rund 300 Meter entfernt und hat auch geschaut, dass vor allem Dach als Zivilisten auch Soldaten
国际公认领土的17%左右。这样一来呢，中国为什么没有在立场文件里呼吁俄方撤军呢？谢谢。
But why hasn't China called for the pulling out of Russia against such backdrop?
你提到了今天中方发布的关于政治解决乌克兰危机的中国立场文件。那么首先呢，我也想先向大家介绍一下相关的情况。习近平主席提出的4个应该、4个共同和3点思考，是中方处理乌克兰问题的根本遵循。中方在乌克兰问题上始终秉持客观公正立场，积极劝和促谈，为这个危机解决发挥建设性作用。在乌克兰危机全面时期1周年之际， 中方致力于发布关于政治解决乌克兰危机的中国立场文件，全面系统地阐释中方的有关基本立场主张。文件涵盖尊重各国主权，并且表达思维、灵活止战、启动和谈、解决人道危机、保护平民和战俘、维护核电站安全、减少战略风险、保障粮食外运、停止单边制裁、确保产业链供应链稳定、推动战后重建12个方面。中方愿在基础上继续同国际社会一道，对这个乌克兰危机政治解决做出自己的贡献。那么针对提到的问题，谈一下在乌克兰问题有着复杂的历史经历。中方在乌克兰问题上一贯秉持客观公正立场，积极探讨促谈，按照事情本身的是非曲直决定自身立场，始终坚定站在和平一边，站在对话一边，站在历史正确的一边。中方愿在关于政治解决乌克兰危机的中国立场文件基础上，同国际社会一道，继续为推动乌克兰危机的政治解决做出自己的贡献。下一个问题。
谢谢。我先说，今天中国外交部发布关于政治解决乌克兰危机的中国立场，该文件指出，国际社会应将为重新坦白创造条件和提供平台。请问中方是否愿意为乌俄和谈提供平台？谢谢。
我们一切有利于和平解决危机的努力都应当得到鼓励和支持。中方愿在关于政治解决乌克兰危机的中国立场文件基础上，继续同国际社会一道，为政治解决乌克兰危机发挥建设性作用。下一个问题。
Just to follow up from Bloomberg on that, you said China wants to work with the rest of the world with this position document. What next steps are in line for what happens next, basically? And secondly, have you any reaction to the position paper? Diplomats and some experts that we spoke to have dismissed it, saying that there's nothing new in this so far. How would you react to such characterization? And what sort of reaction have you had to the paper so far? Thank you.
彭博社提问有2个问题，第一是中国表示将国际社会一起共同努力推动乌克兰危机的这个政治解决，那么想问一下下一步中方打算做什么？第二个是关于这个立场文件的一些回应，也就是有一些专家还有外交官都表示在这个立场文件里面并没有什么新的内容，你对这些评论有什么回应？
刚才我已经介绍了，我们愿意的在中方发布的关于政治。
はいはい。
まだ出てきた。
出てきましたね。
緩んできた。
緩んできました。福島と奈良。
奈良にいたの？
はい。
ここに奈良。
奈良です。こちらにいらっしゃいました。
転々としてるのに20年ぐらい。
あ、そうなんです。
ニューデリーの前は大阪なんですよ。
あ、ニューデリーいつからですか
？2019年。
あ、本当ですか？私2019年、19に福島に行ったんです。
ああ、じゃあいいですね。まずじゃあ、奈良に行ったんですね。ああ、そうですか。じゃあ、けどまあ、多分
秋吉さんとか。
秋吉さん斎藤のケース。
そうです。秋吉さん。
誰だっけ？秋吉さん。鈴木優さん。
あ、そうです。優さんと。
優さんはね、優秀な人ですね。優秀な人ですね。彼は優秀ですね。あれ、芦田さんとか
橋田さんは重なってます。はい。
あ、寺尾君ね。ああ、出身は違うんでしょうか？
あ、じゃないです。まあでも地
かれると難しい。生まれは松山。
なるほど。
どちらですか？
僕は関西にはそう大学も大阪大学だから。
ああ、そうなんですね。
大学で今ここは関西大阪初めての勤務だった2年間しかいなかった。
あ、どうでした？忙しいっすよね。
でもまあ東京の次は大阪だったんで、なんかまあ東京よりは忙しくないじゃないですか。
ああ、そうかそうか。
忙しくないっていうか、まあ忙しい。まあ逆に忙しいかもしれないね、大阪とかね。記者とか、警察とか絶対忙しいよね。
めっちゃ忙しいですよね。
嫌だな。
ローカルは他？
ローカルは長崎、広島。英語時代としては長崎、広島、東京、大阪。もともと僕美術で入ってて、その時は札幌にいたんですよ。札幌、北見、5年いて、英語時代に変わって長崎。そうなんです。だから結構自分でも被爆者の人とか取材して、割と戦争の取材は好きっていうか。エクスペのね、インパール作戦っていうのを撮影担当したんですよ。大阪って買いに行くときに、東京の最後に。この間ようやく念願のインパール行ってきました。ここに来る直前に。
そうなんですか。
企画取材で。もう一瞬だけやってた。
そうだったんですね。
一口の夢を書いて
大変ですか、
大変。
決定と。
大変です。
影ましょう。
だいぶ大変です。彼はまあうまくやってるように思います。
本当ですか。言葉がきつい。
言葉なんていうか。数わせないですか？
数わせないです。
ああ、そうですか。
噂は金がね聞いているんです。
ご病気ですか？精神的にはちょっとあんまり不安定な人なんだろうなというふうに思います。不思議な人です。見えてる世界が違うっていうところが分かりました。
なるほど、なるほど。
いろんな人がいますから。
理解に苦しむ。
まあでも、ちょっと会う分には全然大丈夫です。長くいるとちょっと
なるほど、なるほど。
あれって思うことが。
ユーゼミがじゃあ今、2020年
はい、丸3年、4年目なんですよ。丸3年で。そうまあ、残留は希望してるんですよ。島崎さんはなんか、
そうなんだ。
わかんないです。わかんないです。希望です。なんで？
本当ですか？
なんでそんなな。
なんか生活環境とか衛生面とか大丈夫ですか？ご飯とか
全然大丈夫。
本当ですか？
全然大丈夫です。あれ行ったことない？
ないんですよ。
ないの？もうそうだけど来ればわかりますよ。来れば意外といいと思います。意外とっていうか
あ、そうなんです。
家族と一緒に行ってるんですけど。そうでした。ああ、いいですね。
張管理部。
別の角度からあっちから狙ってる。あ、いましたいました。
おいしい。
そこどけそこどけってなってます。
出ていいか。
出ていい。
はい。どうですか。
結構街は都会です。
ヨハネスとは全然違う。この時間もあんまなくて、わちゃわちゃ感がアイランドの南側の海岸のところはちょっとセンターのところが、まあ、リゾートで出たっけ？次だから家族用のベッドに。いやいや、マンション。
夜用のね、ちょっとメロもあり。
全然その
広場はなんかコメントできる。
無理に1万円かけてあれですけど、人もそんなに高くない。どうして人もなっちゃう。
リミット時がリミットぐらいで1回探してあげた方がいいと思うんだけど、しかし何もできない。
俺 C してる。俺 C してる。あれかこっち。
俺 C してるんだけど、
多分俺かどっかキラー。すげえわちゃわちゃしてるんで、ロビーで。
かける情報が。とりあえず、なんかヘイズのさっきのセレモニーとゼレンスキーの喋った話が東京で書いてた。こっちは情報が良かった。なので、雑感を書いた方がいいんだけど、雑感があんまり。
もうこれもまだ始まってないから何がどうなるか。
ああ、そう。なかなか見てもなんかいい。そうなの、なんか1時間くらいまで大丈夫ですか。
元気をどんどん進めたらちょっと怒られるんですよ。みんなで喋りながら。
そうだね。もう大丈夫よ。大体みんな赤で。
Мы там.
А то, что кто-то оно есть, сразу сзади. Это не то, что похоже, миллион
あ、これ終わったの？あ、もう任せちゃって。あとはまあこれを見た上で結果を書いてもらうっていうね。まあここはまあある意味中継の3枚Something's happening. Okay.
No, this is close. Wait a minute. No, 20 minutes.
あと2時間ぐらいなんか開放するみたいな。
After a few weeks.
Oh, later.
Yes, yes.
Later, just later.
Later?
Вообще нормально тротуар робити нахуй. Тупо нормально. Той шаги, той отримували.
Tell me, in 20 seconds I'm live. Tell me, I'm live in 10 seconds. You think Zelensky? Oui, c'est un jour triste. Aujourd'hui, un jour noir pour les Ukrainiens. Il n'y a rien à célébrer d'ici, si ce n'est à rendre hommage à nos soldats, des soldats pour lesquels ils ont une immense gratitude. Nous rentrons du front de l'Est. Les militaires nous disent qu'ils espèrent effectivement faire la différence bientôt au printemps, essayer de lancer une contre-offensive. Ils attendent avec impatience les chars, les nouveaux matériels qui sont promis par les Européens. Alors ici à Kiev ce matin, il y a un mélange.
Назад!
Billeder af de personer, der faldt i den krig, der fandt sted i 2014. Det bliver bevægelsen meget, meget længere med alle de soldater, der er blevet dræbt her i løbet af det seneste år. Men han er altså til stede her på årsdagen for invasionen, og han går rundt her et eller andet sted i den her folkemængde. Der er enormt meget sikkerhed her på pladsen i løbet af dagen, fordi en eller anden skulle komme, og det er altså nok den økonomiske. Hvis I ser her til venstre, så kan I se, her står udbrændte russiske kampvogne. De er blevet udstillet her og været her i en hel del måneder, og er jo et sted, som borgerne i Kiev ofte tager hen til og kigger på og glæder sig over, at det lykkedes at slå russerne tilbage. Det her det er jo et symbol på det udbrændte russiske kampvogne, og det er også dem, som både den amerikanske præsident Joe Biden har været over og kigge på, og nu altså også den polske premierminister, som befinder sig i en af de biler, efter han har været over at lægge en krans herovre bag det ved de mindesmærke på det. Det er bare en af de begivenheder, der foregår. Tidligere på dagen, hvad der ellers kommer til at ske. Jeg kan kurva не зробив. Der er så mange her i hovedstaden.
Ja, det må vi tro.
Det skal побачити. Nei.
Fast det at denne krigen skal vi vinne, vi skal ikke forhandle det.
Överväldigade av patienter heller sedan konflikten koncentrerats mer till östra delarna av landet. Jag ser militärer vid den här väggen där man har satt upp bilder på många av de soldater som har stupat i kriget. Ända sedan 2014 faktiskt, när Ryssland annekterade Krim och började stötta separatister i Donbassområdet. Jag ser flera blomkransar som lagts ner vid den här väggen. Det här är ju området som USAs president Joe Biden besökte också bara för några dagar sedan tillsammans med Zelensky. Och jag vet att Zelensky, han är i området i alla fall. Han var vid Sofia-katedralen för en liten stund sedan. Och det har ryktats om att han ska komma hit också och att han senare ska hålla en presskonferens på ett intilliggande hotellen. Men än så länge har jag inte sett den ukrainske presidenten.
Det er sjovt.
バイデンの日はバイデン取れましたやっぱりこんな感じですげえな100キロバイクそこよりもう一個後ろですよねもう一個後ろだから逆そうですよ僕もそう何のためにこれ持ってきたんだやべえなどうしよういいですねこういう時だけですねすぐにだと思ってましたバフムトで損に壊れちゃって、それで変えたったんですA1 は早いかもしれないけど、A7 があるそうだったんで、夜全然撮影できる。全然ピントがいい。ライトだ。ゼレンスキー来ないんじゃん。完璧。来てよ。どうしようか。リーダーさんって来ないですか。臨場で。急に東京絶対歓迎はするでしょ。また会見どっかで。そうですね。何かあったら練習。Да, смотри.
Україні незламність. Слава усім, хто зараз в бою. Слава Збройним силам України, Національній гвардії, розвідці, Службі безпеки, Національній поліції, українським прикордонникам і усім вам, нашим силам оборони і безпеки. Слава усім вам, хто допомагає щоденно битися і хто рятує життя. Світла пам'ять усім, чиє життя забрала ця війна. Слава нашим героям! Слава Україні!
Розпочинаємо церемонію вручення державних нагород України. Указами Президента України за особисту мужність і героїзм, виявлені у захисті державного суверенітету та територіальної цілісності України, самовіддане служіння українському народові, присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Бові Євгенію Петровичу, підполковнику.
Дякую за службу. Дякую.
Слісарчуку Артему Олександровичу присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка», старшому лейтенанту посмертно. Нагороду отримує мати Алла Анатоліївна.
Пишаємось вашим сином. Прийміть моє співчуття. Ніколи не забудемо. Вся держава ніколи не забуде. Дякую вам. Батько молодець, це син. Племінник. Ну що ж, дядько потужний.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Онопрієнку Віталію Сергійовичу, молодшому сержанту.
Віталій Сергійович, вітаю вас. Дякую вам за службу, за ваш героїзм. Дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Сові Сергію Олександровичу, старшому солдату, посмертно. Нагороду отримує дружина Оксана Анатоліївна.
Я дякую за службу вашого чоловіка. Дякую за мої співчуття. Дякую. Дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Шаркову Артему Володимировичу, підполковнику. Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Усову Павлу Віталійовичу, старшому лейтенанту, посмертно. Нагороду отримують батько Віталій Володимирович та мати Валентина Іванівна.
Від цього народу України мої співчуття. Україна ніколи не забуде вашого сина.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Пашку Леву Валерійовичу, лейтенанту.
Вітаю, Валерію. Пішов до вас, думав складно, ви такий міцний, молодець. Дуже дякую вам. Напевно, тримайте. Бережіть себе.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Чупріну Михайлу Руслановичу, старшому лейтенанту, посмертно. Нагороду отримують мати Ольга Юріївна та відчим Віктор Олександрович.
Прийміть, будь ласка, цю нагороду від нашого народу, від цієї держави. Вдячність за героїзм вашого сина і мої співчуття.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Козаку Василю Михайловичу, майору.
Майор Козак за вашим наказом прибув.
Василь, вітаю вас. Дуже дякую тобі.
Наш герой.
Ви наш герой. Велика подяка. Пишаюся.
Служу українському народу.
Дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Крикуненку Олександру Валерійовичу, майору, посмертно. Нагороду отримує дружина Марина Олександрівна.
Шановна Марина Олександрівна, прийміть, будь ласка, цю нагороду і мої співчуття. І велика вдячність за такого чоловіка. Ніколи не забуду. Дуже дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Кушніру Дмитру Володимировичу, штаб-сержанту.
Дмитро, вітаю вас. Дякую за службу. Ви наш герой.
Я вже в Бахмуті друзі. Він дуже просить, щоб ми отримали. Дуже просить.
Добре. Все зробимо. Дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Юрчику Юрію Олександровичу, полковнику, посмертно. Нагороду отримують дружина Лілія Володимирівна та донька Кароліна Юріївна.
Цю нагороду за великий героїзм вашому чоловікові і мої співчуття, вдячність від всіх нас. Що можна сказати, ми ніколи не забудемо його подвиги кожного героя. Бережіть себе. Бережіть себе. Дякуємо вам.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Лакусті Олегу Корнійовичу, полковнику поліції.
Дякую вам за службу.
Дякую вам. Служу українському народу.
Дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Курадченку Михайлу Віталійовичу, полковнику поліції, посмертно. Нагороду отримують дружина Анна Миколаївна та доньки Марія Михайлівна і Вероніка Михайлівна.
Шановна, прийміть, будь ласка, цю нагороду від народу України. Вдячність всій нашій державі. Низький уклін і співчуття. Ми ніколи не забудемо героїзм вашого чоловіка, вашого батька. Дякую вам. Бережіть себе.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з врученням ордена «Золота зірка» Кошовцю Андрію Віталійовичу, старшому сержанту Служби цивільного захисту.
Андрію, дякую. Дякую за службу.
Служу українському народу.
Дякую.
Присвоєно звання Герой України з удостоєнням ордена «Золота зірка» Ахмедгарєєву Іллі Шамілєвичу, молодшому сержанту Служби цивільного захисту, посмертно. Нагороду отримує мати Оксана Олександрівна.
Оксана Олександрівна, прийміть, будь ласка, цю нагороду. Мої співчуття, велику вдячність. Тримайтесь, будь ласка. Ми ніколи не забудемо героїзм вашого сина. Дякую вам.
Указом Президента України за громадянську мужність, особисті заслуги у захисті державного суверенітету та територіальної цілісності України в умовах воєнного стану, вірність українському народові нагороджено орденом за заслуги 3-го ступеня Полотняка Дениса Володимировича, електромонтера філії акціонерного товариства «Миколаївобленерго» Вознесенського району. Шому Володимира Олександровича, директора комунального закладу «Бородянська дитячо-юнацька спортивна школа», Київська область. Нагороджено орденом княгині Ольги 3-го ступеня Рясну Ганну Олександрівну, директора обласної комунальної установи Луганський обласний центр підтримки молодіжних ініціатив та соціальних досліджень, волонтера. Присвоєно почесне звання «Заслужений лікар України» Гаврилюк Валентині Петрівні, завідувачеві відділення комунального некомерційного підприємства «Запорізька обласна клінічна лікарня».
Дякую вам за вашу роботу велику.
Президент України Володимир Зеленський. Розпочинаємо церемонію вручення бойових прапорів. Як символ честі, доблесті та слави, як заклик до кожного військовослужбовця віддано служити українському народові, мужньо, вміло і непохитно боронити українську державу, бойовий прапор вручається 3-й окремій штурмовій бригаді сухопутних військ Збройних сил України. Бойовий прапор отримує начальник штабу бригади підполковник Ігор Клименко. П'ятій окремій штурмовій бригаді сухопутних військ Збройних сил України. Бойовий прапор отримує командир бригади, Герой України, полковник Олександр Яковенко.
Дякую вам за службу.
– 15-му мобільному прикордонному загону Державної прикордонної служби України. Бойовий прапор отримує начальник загону, Герой України, полковник Валерій Падитель.
Дякую за службу.
Департаменту поліції особливого призначення об'єднана штурмова бригада Національної поліції України «Людь». Бойовий прапор отримує начальник департаменту, полковник поліції Олександр Нетребко.
Дякую за службу.
Захід завершено.
Dear journalists, dear guests, welcome to the press conference. We are very delighted to welcome the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, here in Tallinn on the 24th February. The Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, have just concluded their trilateral meeting and will deliver short remarks. After that, it is possible for media to ask questions. The press conference is in English with simultaneous translation into Estonian. First, Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear journalists, it is my great pleasure to see so many of you here today, as it is our Independence Day. Dear Jens, dear Ursula, I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation to join us here on our Independence Day when we celebrate our 105th anniversary of Estonia. This means a lot to me, and it also means a lot to Estonian people, so thank you for being here. Let me start by sharing a thought by Diacedes. The secret to happiness is freedom, and the secret to freedom is courage. Estonia had the courage to fight for our freedom. The same applies to our Ukrainian friends. Their fight for freedom today is a reminder that freedom is not given and it needs constant care. Freedom also needs friends and partners. 31 years ago, when Estonia restored its independence after the Soviet occupation, we set as our foreign and defense policy motto, "We are never alone again." Jens, Ursula, your presence here today is its embodiment. Estonia is a proud member of the European Union and NATO. NATO and the European Union are the cornerstones of not only our freedom and security, but that of the whole Europe. Grey areas, however, create instability and lead to war. They must become the thing in the past. That is why Ukraine's place is in the European Union and after the end of the war also in NATO. For Estonians, the 24th of February has always been about celebrating freedom. We know that freedom comes at a price. You need to fight for it. Allied presence here in Estonia contributes every day to the security of our country and the alliance as a whole. But Estonia takes its own part of the burden increasingly seriously. We have been significantly boosting our defense spending. It's nearly 3% now. The will of the Estonian people to defend our country is unwavering. The number of volunteers who wish to contribute to national defense has considerably increased. Today, Ukrainians are showing unprecedented courage and commitment in defending their country. The free world needs to show the same courage and support to Ukraine until the last Russian soldier has left Ukraine. Ukraine must win and the aggressor must be pushed back. For this, we must also believe in Ukraine's victory. Ukraine needs enough weapons and ammunition to win the war. That is why I propose that EU member states jointly procure ammunition for Ukraine. During the pandemic, we were able to react quickly to jointly procure vaccines. Let us act quickly now and send more ammunition to Ukraine. We must keep in mind that the threat Russia poses is a long-term one. In addition to the conventional war, they are also waging a hybrid war to create chaos and divide us. All European countries need to invest more in their own defense and resilience. We cannot be afraid of Russian terror tactics. If we fall for Russia's threats, we will wake up in a much more dangerous world. Ukraine and Russia's other neighbors are not afraid. So why should those countries who are further from Ukraine be afraid? The way this war against Ukraine ends will define peace for generations to come. For any peace to last, there needs to be accountability. Russian crimes against Ukraine and its people must not go unpunished, and no Russian leader can be immune from responsibility. As Team Europe and Team NATO, we have shown significant unity and resolve over the past year. Looking ahead, these are key words we must take with us. courage, belief, accountability, and leave no room for fear. Thank you.
Thank you. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, please.
Yes, thank you, Prime Minister, Secretary General, dear Jens, dear Kaja. Thank you very much for hosting us in Tallinn on such a special day. Indeed, the day when 105 years ago Estonia declared its independence. Estonia's determination to remain a free and independent country has been put to the test time and again. But independence was finally restored on the 20th of August 1991. And I also want to share a thought or quote of a famous Estonian, the former president, Lennart Meri, who said, "Europe is not geography. Europe is a unity of principles and an allegiance to principles. Principles shape geography. Geography does not shape principles." End of quote. And this is a truth that Putin has never understood. 1 year on, from the start of his brutal war, Putin has failed to achieve a single one of his strategic goals. Instead of dividing the European Union, he finds us united and determined to stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. Instead of dominating the global energy market, he has seen his main source of revenue slashed. Instead of wiping Ukraine from the map, he is confronted with a nation more vigorous than ever. Ukraine has become a testament to the bravery of a nation which will never relent in its quest for freedom. We have seen that in every single day of the 365 days since the beginning of this atrocious war. And just as Estonia stands proudly as a free and independent state, Ukraine will prevail. Ukraine will prevail because Ukrainians will neither flinch nor step back. And Ukraine will prevail because Europe and its partners and allies will stand firm. But 1 year on, the fight rages on, and Putin has upped the stakes. He is sending hundreds of thousands of young Russians as cannon fodder in the trenches in Ukraine. What we saw and heard earlier this week from Moscow tells us that as the losses mount on the battlefield, so does the desperation, the delusion, and the disinformation. And that shows the strain Putin's regime is under. But it also comes with real and renewed danger for Ukraine, so now is the time to double down. We must keep giving Ukraine the means to defend itself until the Russians end this war and leave Ukraine. And this is why we stand firmly by Ukraine, as determined as ever, to support Ukraine financially, economically, and militarily, to increase our own defense capabilities, and to increase the pressure on Russia and hold it accountable. Russia is increasingly isolated. I think very telling was the vote yesterday in the United Nations, 141 countries that voted in favor of the resolution condemning Russia. Russia is falling backwards towards an autarkic economy, cut away from the world. Our sanctions are eroding sharply its economic base, slashing any prospect to modernize it. We will continue to put pressure on Russia and on those supporting it on the battlefield. We will continue going after Putin's cronies, and we will go after those helping Russia to circumvent sanctions or replenish its war arsenal. At the same time, we work to ensure Ukraine's economic and military resilience. First, with continued financial support, 67 billion euros we mobilized so far. Second, with increased military support, We aim to train 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers in the European Union. Our member states are delivering military equipment, and we will turn to joint procurement to deliver urgent military supplies for Ukraine, such as 155mm ammunition. Equally important is to work with our defence industry to ramp up the production of this ammunition and other equipment needed by Ukrainian forces, but also to replenish our own stocks. And dear Kaya, you rightly so brought attention to this at the last European Council, and we are taking action. Finally, this is not just about winning on the battlefield. Ukrainians are fighting for their right to choose their own future. And they have already chosen. They have chosen the European Union. They have chosen the unity of principles, as President Leonard Meri said. The Ukrainian soldiers fighting in the trenches of Bakhmut are defending this unity of principles. And in these dark times, the hearts of Ukrainian people are warmed by the confidence that Ukraine will join the European Union one day. This is how principles shape geography. Dear Kaya, today I am proud to stand here together with you and you, Jens, in Tallinn, celebrating Estonia's freedom and independence. And I'm proud that we stand here together in support of the Ukrainian people and their fight for freedom and independence. I am certain that, like the people of Estonia, Ukraine too will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, please.
Prime Minister Kallas, Kaya, congratulations on Estonia's Independence Day, and President von der Leyen, Ursula, it's an honor to be together with both of you here in Tallinn today on this very symbolic day. Over 100 years ago, Estonian troops fought bravely for their freedom and independence. Independence was short-lived, but the Estonian people never gave up. And with the fall of the Iron Curtain, you regained your freedom. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the celebrations today. The flag raising ceremony and the wreath laying ceremony was really moving, and it demonstrates how much you value your freedom. Your history is a strong reminder that we cannot take our freedom for granted. Freedom is not for free. We must fight for it every day. Today it is the Ukrainian people who are bravely fighting for their freedom. And despite a dark year of despair and destruction, their determination and courage will no doubt prevail. 1 year ago, President Putin launched his full-fledged invasion of Ukraine, an illegal war of aggression, in blatant breach of basic international rules. He wanted to break the will of the Ukrainian people, and he wanted to break our unity. President Putin failed. Ukraine stands, and NATO and the EU stand with Ukraine. Yet Putin has not given up his goals. He wants a different Europe where Russia can dictate what neighbors do. He is not preparing for peace. He is preparing for more war. So we must give Ukraine what they need to prevail. Some worry our support to Ukraine risks triggering escalation. But there are no risk-free options. And the biggest risk of all is if President Putin wins. Because the message to him and other authoritarian leaders would be that they can use force to get what they want. That will make the world more dangerous and us more vulnerable. So supporting Ukraine is not just morally the right thing to do, it is also in our own security interest. That is why NATO allies are providing unprecedented support to Ukraine, working hand in hand with the European Union. Again, Estonia is leading by example, providing more military aid as a share of GDP than any other country. NATO presence protects the space for allies to provide this support. Since 2014, we have significantly reinforced our presence and readiness, from the Black to the Baltic Sea, including here in Estonia. NATO's multinational battle group in Tapa, led by the United Kingdom, deters aggression. Fighters from France and Germany help protect your skies. And NASAMS from Spain will augment your air defenses. All this sends a clear message to Moscow. NATO will protect and defend Estonia and every inch of Allied territory. Our Article 5 commitment is ironclad. All for one and one for all. And at our Vilnius summit in July, we'll take further steps to strengthen our collective defence. We also see progress as regards the historic accession of Finland and Sweden into our alliance, two close neighbours of Estonia. 28 out of 30 allies have already ratified the accession protocols. I had good discussions with President Erdogan in Ankara last week. We agreed to restart the talks and to convene a trilateral meeting between Finland, Sweden and Turkey at NATO headquarters in mid-March under my auspices, to discuss the implementation of the agreement made last June and how to complete the accession process. And it is good that the Hungarian Parliament will start ratification process next week. Our aim is for both Finland and Sweden to join as soon as possible. This will strengthen their security, it will strengthen Europe's security, and it will strengthen NATO. So there, Kaja, there, Ursula, thank you once again for our excellent discussions, and not least for your strong commitment to the transatlantic bond for North America and Europe standing together to protect our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's possible for media to ask questions. Please do state your name, media outlet you're representing, and to whom the question is addressed to. Please use microphone, which with my colleague will assist, and we have first ready there. Please.
Yes. Thank you, Tarmo Moiberg, for public broadcasting. Questions to all of you, actually. About China's position paper about Ukraine, and it has 12 points. I would like to know, do you find it credible, especially as the China abstained United Nations vote yesterday about Ukraine? And also, before the war started, US shared intelligent info about Russia's troops and preparation. So, has United States shared any info about its claim made by Mr. Blinken that China is considering giving weapons to Russia? Thank you.
Yeah, so, indeed, the Chinese paper, I think you have to see the principles they shared. It's not a peace plan, but principles that they shared. You have to see them against a specific backdrop. And that is the backdrop that China has taken side by signing, for example, an unlimited friendship right before the invasion, Russia's invasion in Ukraine started. So we will look at the principles, of course, but we will look at them against the backdrop that China has taken sides.
On the question of supplies of military support from China to Russia, we have not seen any actual delivery of lethal aid. But what we have seen are signs and indications that China may be planning and considering to supply military aid to Russia. And China should not do that. because that will be to support an illegal war of aggression, breaching international law and violating the UN Charter. And China is a member of the UN Security Council, and they have a particular responsibility to protect the UN Charter, and this is a war aggression violating exactly that Charter. Then on the proposals and the points presented by China. So first of all, China doesn't have much credibility because they have not been able to condemn the illegal invasion of Ukraine. And they also signed, just days before the invasion, an agreement between President Xi and President Putin on limitless partnership with Russia. So I think what we see now in Ukraine is that President Putin is not preparing for war. He is preparing for the exact opposite, for more war, for more new offensives. And therefore, most likely, this war at some stage will end at the negotiating table. But if we want a peaceful solution, we need to also realize that what happens around that negotiating table is totally dependent on the strength and the situation on the battlefield. So meaning that if we want a peaceful negotiated solution where Ukraine prevails as a sovereign independent nation, then we need to support Ukraine militarily now. Because that's the only way to create the conditions where President Putin realizes that he will not win on the battlefield. He has to sit down and accept Ukraine as an independent sovereign nation in Europe. So military support today is the way to achieve a peaceful agreement tomorrow.
Yes, actually, I have nothing really to add because all was said. UN Charter is also something that China is and should be respecting, and it says the principles of territorial integrity and also the right to defend one's country and sovereignty. So if they are providing military aid to aggressor, then they go against this UN Charter, and that is dangerous to the peace of the world in general. Thank you.
We have our next one. Pradeep, please.
My name is Külli Kapper and I come from the Postimees. I have one question to the President of the European Commission and one question to the Secretary General of the NATO. To the Commission, what measures will you take to prevent the circumvention of the European sanctions by the third countries? And to the NATO Secretary General, how NATO will help Moldova to secure its defense against Russia?
So we are, in our sanction packages, we are increasing the measures to make sure that there are neither loopholes nor a circumvention. We have a sanctions envoy, David O'Sullivan, who is traveling to different third countries to reinforce the message that any kind of circumvention of sanctions will have consequences. For example, we have included in our sanctions packages the possibility to list persons or entities that are even from third countries that are circumventing the sanctions by exporting goods from or importing goods to third countries from the European Union and then bringing them to Russia. So here, increasingly, we are giving a very clear message. This will not be tolerated, and this will have consequences.
On Moldova, of course, we are concerned when we see the challenges they face, and that's a direct consequence of the war in Ukraine. Moldova is a close and highly valued partner of NATO. We have been working with them for many years. We have agreed now to step up our partnership and also to help to build defense capacity. We have a tailored defense capacity building agreement in place to help to strengthen their different institutions and to help them to strengthen their resilience. We also welcome, of course, efforts by individual allies. I also know that the European Union is doing a lot to support Moldova, because I think if there's one lesson that at least we can learn from the war in Ukraine, is the importance of supporting those countries which are vulnerable for Russian aggression as soon as possible. And that also applies for Moldova. That's the reason why I need to work more closely and provide more support to Moldova.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Hello, Herman Gelomes from Delphi. As you all know, any positive signal from these two large multinational powers can serve as a boost for morale, for troops on the front lines and an entire nation in suffering. So my question to President von der Leyen would be, Ukraine would like to begin accession talks to the EU within this year. Can you tell Ukrainians what their government can do to make that dream happen? And Secretary General Stoltenberg, President Zelensky is coming to the Vilnius summit, and Ukraine would like to see a clear pathway to membership there. So what can the Ukrainians do to make that dream happen? And I'd like the Prime Minister's thoughts on that as well. Thank you.
Yes, the accession process is a merits-based process. So it's not a rigid time-wise, but it depends on the candidate country. And it is amazing to see the determination of Ukraine to go through this thorough process, but at utmost speed. And already their step forward to apply for becoming a candidate country, they had to do a lot, and it was impressive to see how they were delivering while fighting a war. It also shows the functioning of the administration and the highly digitized state of the administration, which is impressive. Therefore, it is, of course, in the hands of Ukraine how they perform, how they reform, how they improve the status of their country, with strong support from the European Commission, because this is our task, to advise and to support and to help as much as possible on that. So I can only say it is impressive to see the strong will of Ukraine to join the European Union, the willingness to reform thoroughly their country, and all this while fighting an aggressor. This is outstanding. It's in their hands. We will have, as a process, an oral presentation of the progress in spring to the member states, but more important is the report in fall that summarizes for all candidate countries in the accession process their progress during the year. And I am confident that Ukraine will excel in this report in the fall that then will be presented to the member states.
I invited President Zelensky to attend the NATO summit in Vilnius in July. I really hope that he can be there in person, but of course it depends on the situation, because he is in the midst of a full-fledged war, invasion of his country. NATO's position on membership for Ukraine remains unchanged. We have stated several times that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. At the same time, we all realize that the first step to ensure that that will happen is to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation. Without a sovereign, democratic, free Ukraine, the membership will not be an issue at all. So all our focus, all our efforts is now on ensure that Ukraine prevails, that Putin doesn't win, because then there will be no issue of membership for Ukraine. Then when this war ends, then of course we need to ensure that history doesn't repeat itself, because there is a pattern of Russian aggression. Georgia in 2008, Crimea and Eastern Donbass in 2014, and then the full-fledged invasion last year. And we need to make sure that when the war ends now, that Russia is not able to continue to chip away at European security, and we need to break this cycle of Russian aggression. This will be about enabling the Ukrainians to have strong armed forces themselves, so they can deter aggression themselves. But it will also be an issue of creating the framework and the political framework that sends a clear message to Moscow that they cannot continue to attack an independent, sovereign, democratic neighbor, Ukraine. So we need to help Ukraine move forward on the Euro-Atlantic path. Ukraine is part of the Euro-Atlantic family, and the first step is to ensure that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign nation.
To add to that, grey areas are a source of conflict and war, and that's why NATO has been the peace project. We have to believe in Ukraine, and therefore we also have to give military aid so that Ukraine can defend themselves, and then when the war is over, then move on with the open door policy of NATO.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Mari Selran for German Public Broadcaster ARD. Question to the Secretary General. You mentioned talks with Turkey. How can NATO act on Turkey in order to speed up Sweden's joining process?
So, first of all, this is a priority for NATO and for me. And I'm confident that both Finland and Sweden will become full members of the alliance. Second, I have just met with President Erdogan, and of course we discussed also how we can make progress on the accession of Finland and Sweden, and we agreed to restart the talks, to convene a meeting in Brussels at the NATO headquarters with Finland, Sweden, and Turkey, and we need to also understand that so far this has been the quickest accession process in NATO's modern history. Finland and Sweden applied in May last year. Already in June, 30 allies, also Turkey, decided to invite them. And we also, all 30 allies agreed, including Turkey, on the accession protocols, and all 30 allies have signed these accession protocols. Then 28 out of 30 allies have already ratified in the national parliaments. The Hungarian parliament had made declared that they would start the accession process, also the discussions and the decisions next week. And then on Finland and Sweden, I cannot guarantee you any specific date, but on Finland, Turkey has made it clear that they don't see any problems with ratification. With Sweden, some issues still remains. I have made it clear that both Finland and Sweden have lived up to their commitments they signed up to at the NATO summit last year. So I think the time has come to ratify both of them now. But of course, Turkey has another position, and then we have this trilateral mechanism to address how to ensure that the accession process continues to move forward. And the most important thing is not whether Finland and Sweden joins exactly at the same time. The most important thing is that they join as soon as possible. If you can briefly add one more thing, and that is that we need to also understand that Finland and Sweden are in a total different place now. They're much more secure now than before they applied. Because as part of the accession process, they have now been integrated more and more into NATO's civilian and military structures, defense planning, capability targets. We exercise more together. NATO has increased its presence. Different allies have also provided bilateral security assurances. So it's absolutely inconceivable that Finland or Sweden will be faced with any military threats from Russia without NATO reacting. So we are making a lot of progress. We have come a long way already, and I'm confident that we'll also finalize this process.
So, and time for final question, please.
James Bays from Al Jazeera. Secretary General, I've already asked you this once this week, but please, can you tell us what evidence you have that China is thinking of giving weapons to Russia? And to all three of you, I know this is the final question, so very quickly and directly, you're here for Estonia's independence, but what message directly to President Putin do you want to send today about Ukraine's independence?
Well, we are monitoring closely what China is doing, and we have seen signs that they may be considering and planning to send lethal aid to Russia. This will be a very big mistake. This is very serious, and that's also why the United States and other allies have conveyed so clearly that this should not happen. Then briefly on the message to Moscow. The message to Moscow is that President Putin started this war. President Putin can end this war today by withdrawing his forces. If he doesn't do that, we will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. And allies have provided unprecedented level of military support to Ukraine because this is about Ukraine. It will be a tragedy if President Putin wins for the Ukrainians, but it will be dangerous for all of us. And therefore, this is in our own security interest to ensure that Ukraine prevails.
Ukraine is not only fighting for its own independence and territorial integrity, but also for universal values. And these are the values of peace, respect for the international law, respect for the UN Charter, and therefore Ukraine is not only fighting for its independence but also for all of us. And we will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. We have shown resilience, unity and determination during the last 12 months, and President Putin can bet on the fact that this will be doubled down in resolve, unity and determination to stand by Ukraine.
Yes, we are united, as shown, and we are united behind Ukraine, and Russia can't win this war. So sooner Russia realizes that this aggression was a mistake, the better to everybody. Thank you.
So thank you everyone. This concludes the press conference. Thank you for attending. Thank you for following online. Have a great afternoon. Head aastapäeva.
No. We go like that. Yeah, well, Francine, it's twofold. One is validation. For a lot of the Baltics and Poland, two of the countries that repeated for many years that Vladimir Putin had gone on what they believe was an expansionist revision of history, they now say they were proven right. This was not hysteria. This was no panic. Their assessment of the situation, in fact, was better than that of countries like Germany, which still believed you could have peace through trade. The more trade you had with Russia, the more normal a diplomatic relationship you could have. Obviously, when the war starts, that is out of the picture. You see here that Vladimir Putin had a very strong political instinct when he moved into Ukraine. On the other side, Francine, what you hear too, and this is why the situation is twofold for the Eastern European countries, is that they want to see a bigger presence of NATO. And now the Russians will blame NATO for this war partly, but when you ask any of the European leaders or the Eastern European leaders, what about NATO? What is your perception of it? They always say one thing: where there's peace, there's always NATO. Where there's NATO, there's peace. Yes, Francine, and I would actually agree also with you. The most vivid recollection that I would have to myself is that morning, and if you remember at the time, there was a European summit that was happening in Brussels. This was supposed to be a normal summit. We were ready for a normal summit, and it became the first summit of this war. Now, that shows that for essentially day one, there has been this support from the European side of things that has gone in crescendo. Of course, there's many red lines that are no longer a red line. Remember, at one point there was this conversation of should there be any type of energy relationship with Russia in the early days of the war. Obviously, we know that is over. Russia, as a big energy provider for the European Union, is done. When you look at the weapons, there was this concern of escalation, and we've seen that in reality, a lot of those red lines have been crossed. The question now has to do with the fighter jets, and this is what Ukraine repeats, and they say they want. They say they had 7 items on a wish list, and they have 6 out of 7. The one that is pending would be the 7th. The real question, of course, Francine, will be what happens with this European unity as the war drags on, because we hear the next few weeks will be crucial, but behind the scenes, when you speak to a lot of European officials, they say the ramifications of it, they're not going to go away in a few months. We're in for potentially a long war here. And President, what do you make of this? What do you make of this Chinese plan that has come out lately that calls for respective sovereignty of Ukraine, but also says there should be an immediate ceasefire? You know very well the Ukrainians say that's a trap. What do you think? So what about the Chinese peace plan that says they want a ceasefire, that they call for a ceasefire? Is that a good idea? Because the Ukrainians say it's not.
to, but it's like I can't troubleshoot also if I know there's a problem. Sometimes. Anyway, it's all good. Cool. Just let me know. Yeah, perfect. Her IFB cable.
With the haircut. Yes, I can hear.
And then after this, the next one is top of the hour. We'll probably more normal cadence.
Hello, guys. Yes. It is? That's the landscape?
Speculation. I know, but do we want headroom or want more or less headroom? A little less. A little lower. Got it. Is that good?
Yes, and Francine, and if I may say, there was a very large motorcade behind us, which may or may not have been President Zelensky, but it could easily be, because remember this morning, to address your point of the front line and the battle that is still ongoing, he was with troops and repeating once again that the nation has to be grateful for their soldiers because the war continues. And when you're here in Kyiv, Francine, I must say it's a strange feeling because on the one hand, you do feel like this is a fortress city. You do feel, strangely enough, that you're in safety. But the message, again, that was repeated by the Ukrainian president today is that this is a mirage. The fight is still going on. And again, that takes us back to the question of the weapons. The Ukrainian foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, he said they had a wish list of 7 items. A lot of the red lines have been crossed by now. This fear of escalations. Obviously, the biggest symbol of that was the Leopard 2 tanks. Now they're pushing for those fighter jets. But Francine, we're being told many times that, in fact, beyond the fighter jets, one of the crucial things, it may seem simple, but it's really the ammunition. You can't have the soldiers that are not able to gather handsome stocks of ammunition to be able to fight this war. And that seems to be, for the time being, one of those logistical challenges that both Ukraine but also NATO says they need to fix. There needs to be this constant supply of weapons for this year. Last year it was about getting a hold of those weapons. This year is about maintaining the pace of the stock that comes here into Ukraine. Yes, there's many. And Francine, you know, when we got here on the train, it was a 17-hour train to Kyiv. The first thing that came up in normal conversations with normal people that you meet on the streets was not panic, not fear, because I would not use that word. I don't think they're fearful, and that is a striking thing when you come from, obviously, the West. You come here, you see a city that was under attack a year ago, and you don't perceive fear of anything. We're more fearful than the people who live here and have gone through this for a year. But the one thing they said is there is hesitation, also perhaps concerns to some extent, a level of alertness to what may happen in the next few days because of the one-year mark, whether or not Russia would intensify the missile attacks. I have to say, last night it was very calm. There were no sirens that went off. We were told when we got to the hotel, get ready for it, especially the next 48 hours. It may be dangerous. Nothing has happened for the time being. The mayor did say, however, you never know what's going to happen. They trust their air defense, obviously, that will block out this missiles. And in terms of what happens here, look, the one thing that we picked up from Ukrainian authorities, but also from the people, we've had a lot of conversations over the past 24 hours, is this idea that the fight continues, that they really believe that they can win this war. And yes, it has been a very heavy price, and yes, obviously people pay with their blood. That was a message also from the president this morning. It really is about the troops that are doing this heavyweight, but just this resilience of the people to keep going. You do not perceive on the streets that they are tired, even though it's been a whole year now of a very difficult situation for a lot of people who had a very normal life up until a year ago.